Hey, what's going on, Luke here? And what the fuck is happening with the Sydney Roosters? Dead set. I can't believe how bad they're actually going. In some aspects, I can understand why, obviously injuries and such, but they're literally in 14th spot. They are nearly coming last. Like, they are playing horrendously bad, and I understand that the competition is very, very close. And I was going to do a video initially talking about the West Tigers and talk about the Dragons, and I've already done videos talking about the Bulldogs, so I was going to kind of just give like my thoughts on the wooden spoon battle, and I probably will, but seeing the Roosters down there, it kind of was a bit shocking. But then when you start thinking about the actual season itself, and you go, well, yeah, they haven't really won too many games. And the weird thing is, too, they've actually beat some of the better sides. If I just go through their actual draw, they lost to the Dolphins, they beat the Warriors twice, they beat the Rabbitohs, they beat the Eels, who else? They beat the Dragons, yeah, they've sort of, they beat the Knights as well. Lost to Manly. Yeah, like, for them, it's not like they've been getting smoked by the bottom sides. I mean, they have been getting beat by some of the bottom sides, but they've also got some, pretty good scalps in terms of teams that they've actually beat throughout the year. The problem is they just haven't been able to do it week after week. They have one game where they look amazing or they look half decent, and they have another game where they get absolutely smashed. And there's been times where they've taken on, say like the Dragons, for example, another side down the bottom of the ladder. They beat them one game, and then they got beat by them the next game. It's just little things like that. And that's actually been, for me, that's been kind of the story of the Roosters over the last couple of years. And the reason I'm making this video is because the Roosters, I mean, listen to the Brandon Smith interview he did with YKTR when he signed for them, and they announced the signing of him to the Roosters, and I will touch on Brandon Smith probably quite a bit throughout this video, so spoilers there. But talked about the winning culture, and that's always been a thing that's been mentioned with the Roosters. Oh, their culture's so good, they've got such a good winning culture. They have the super coach, Trent Robinson. They come to this club to win. Quite frankly, the Roosters don't win. They just don't win. I think that's a bit of a myth. I think it's something that maybe the media and, Nick Politis, they've tried to spin it as a way that the Roosters are some dominant club. If you go through the history, they're not a dominant club. They've had a couple years where they were dominant, but they're not an overall dominant club that's up there every year. They're not the same as Melbourne Storm where they can lose a couple of players and you go, all right, Storm probably going to be up there. Look at the Storm side right now. In general, they've got maybe missing their best player, Pappenhausen, who for sure has been out for a long time. Maybe will never come back. They have lots of players who are out during the Origin period. They've lost nearly their whole forward pack, literally. And you could still sit that start of the season and say, yeah, I can see the Storm in the top 8, and they probably will be in the top 8. With the Roosters, they seem to gain players. They gain another international player. They bring in another strong player, and they don't look any better than what they did the previous year. In fact, they tend to look a lot worse. And I don't know if it is a culture thing in the opposite way. I don't know if they've got a bad culture at the club or if it's something that's kind of happened over the last couple of years. But Trent Robinson being talked about as this master coach, with the likes of, your Bennetts and your Bellamy's, even like your Haslers and such at times. I don't see it. I never saw it. And it's I don't know if he's getting exposed right now. But when the Roosters don't have a super team, and I will say they do have a super team right now, but when they don't go out and sign literally the best players in the game, they don't really compete. If we're being completely honest, they might sort of be in amongst it at times, and there's definitely glimpses of the Roosters can be a bit of a force this year. But every year, I've gone into, at least of recent times, I've gone into that season saying, hey, if there's a team that can compete with, Penrith and the Storm and all that, it's the Sydney Roosters, and it's just not happening. And you go back to the last time they actually had a premiership winning side, they went and signed Cooper Cronk, who was probably the best halfback in the game at the time in his farewell seasons. They signed James Tedesco as best fullback. They had Latrell Mitchell, who was the best young up-and-coming player. Joey Manu was still just another up-and-coming player as well. Obviously, we've seen what's happened to him, but he wasn't even the main centre there. Now he's one of the main guys in the whole back line. They had Daniel Tupou, played for New South Wales. They had Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at times. They've had Blake Ferguson. They've had a lot of big name, big marquee sort of players. And then when you look at the side that they've got this year, they still got a lot of good players. I'm going to look at their side taking on the Titans. And keep in mind, this is a team coming 14th, right? James Tedesco's still there. Daniel Tupou's still there. Joey Manu's still there. They got Suaalii, who's massively hyped up, signed $1 billion contract with rugby for a billion years. Mad hyped up. Luke Keary was instrumental when they won the premiership. They've got Hargraves still there. Jack Turpin's experience from the Broncos, I will say not very good, but he's there. Lindsay Collins, one of the standouts of State of Origin. Victor Radley in the back row, someone who's been hyped up for years and years. Nat Butcher, one of the better up-and-coming players. Actually, I'd say not even up-and-coming. He's just one of the better back rowers these days. Nathan Brown, they signed from Parramatta, obviously fallen out of favour a little bit, but played Origin a couple of years ago. They got Brandon Smith coming off the bench. They got the other Butcher, Egan Butcher, you can argue might be the better one. Corey Allen in the reserves. Dylan Napa is terrible. Drew Hutchinson's there. Fletcher Baker. They got a lot of good players. There's no reason they should be as low as what they are. And it's time to sort of analyse why are they down as low as what they are, really. Like, they've had injuries. Every team's had injuries. My Bulldogs have had injuries. You can use that as an excuse for sure. They've had a lot of injuries at different points in the season, but they've had a more than competitive side for the whole season, essentially, and they just haven't been competitive. You look at that. Tedesco's still there. Luke Keary's still there. Like, that's two of the ones who are in, like, the last premiership winning side. Add in all the others there, and that's just the spine itself. I think the problem with the Roosters is I just feel like there's no cohesion, there's no identity for the Roosters. They went and signed Brandon Smith, they let go of Sam Verrills, who was a guy who's come through their system. He played in the last grand final winning side. Yes, he was injured, but he's another one who I think he was a guy who could play the role. Roosters just needed a couple of guys who could play the role. And they went out and they signed Brandon Smith on big money, and he was supposed to be this marquee guy coming in, and quite frankly, he's done nothing. At the start of the season, I was like, Brandon Smith will succeed at the Roosters, but I don't see him being the number 9. In previous years at the Storm, and he played the number 9, he was very, very good, but maybe that's more so due to the Storm system. I don't know. He wouldn't be the first person to leave the Storm and not look as good. So, I mean, it does fit the narrative of the Storm, but it was always talked about as the Roosters had just as good a system, so he's going to come in, and they're going to work things out, and everything's going to be fine and smooth with Brandon Smith coming there, but you look, now he's been relegated to a bench guy, probably coming on, I don't know, maybe as a forward, maybe as a hooker, I'm not sure. He's like the utility guy. But the problem is they have him. Then they had Connor Watson. I mean, obviously he's injured, but they've signed him. It's like they've gone out and signed all these good players, but they don't really have a direction for them other than you're a talented guy and you're off contract, so we're going to bring you in. That's what it feels like to me. I mean, like, Tedesco's obviously been out of form. Joey Manu's played like every position in the back line, dead set. And I think this has been one of the worst seasons for Joey Manu. Last year, we were talking about him possibly being one of the best players in the game, if not the best at times. We're talking about him. Should he be the fullback? Should he be in the halves? He's had to go in the halves. Didn't work. Had to go at fullback. It looks okay, but obviously Tedesco's there. And the centers, like, for big parts of the season, the Roosters just think they can just chuck in whoever they want in the centres and things will work. They've had Suaalii there. They've tried Drew Hutchison there. I don't know why they've done that. At the moment, they got Billy Smith there, who's looked decent, probably looked the better out of all the fringe guys. Corey Allen's been there as well. They just seem to just want to chuck in guys in the back line and just be like, all right, do your best. You play in the Roosters, you should be fine. And I just don't think it works. Centres are often talked about as being, like, defensively one of the most hardest positions to play. And you saw in State of Origin, you can't just chuck in a guy because he's got speed or whatever in the centres and they'll do a job for you. And I think that's where the Roosters kind of come undone. I think their defence in previous years had been rock solid, but I feel like a lot of the big things for the Roosters in previous years, and when they were successful, was that they were a side that gave away penalties on the line, and they just kept giving away penalties, and that was like their method. Just keep giving away penalties, and we'll just keep defending, and we'll slow the ruck down and all that sort of stuff. You can't really do it these days with the 6 agains, and they blow more penalties, and once there's a couple, you're off. They've really nerfed that, and I think it's really, really hurt the Roosters. And I think it's kind of exposed Trent Robinson as not really having a plan B. You look at their halves combination at the moment: Luke Keary, Sandon Smith. Luke Keary spent a lot of time on the sidelines with all the head knocks and all that sort of stuff. He just doesn't seem up to scratch, for being completely honest. Luke Keary, by name, is a guy you'd say, like, oh, he's a really good player, but he definitely hasn't played, up to standards for a couple seasons now. Might be time to tap him on the shoulder and say, move on. They've done it in the past to players. Maybe they should do it to Luke Keary. The problem is they don't really have the next guys coming through. Sam Walker was supposed to be the guy to partner Luke Keary. He was the guy who they talked about as a future, Queensland player. Dude can't even, get back in the side. He's stuck in reserve grade, and it's happened a couple times for him, and they have shown in the past that they are quite ruthless. We've seen Mackay Flanagan. He was earmarked to be, the head of Cooper Cronk, comes in, has an okay season, gets dumped the next year. Obviously, we've seen how Flanagan's career sort of panned out, but at the time when he signed, he was a hyped up guy, as is Sam Walker, as is Sandon Smith, to be honest with you. They're hyping these guys up coming in, and then they're coming in and they're not really doing a job. And the one season that they didn't have, an established superstar half, they ended up, I think, with the wooden spoon. That was when they had like Nicarima playing, they had Jackson Hastings, and that's when Cooper Cronk wasn't there, Mitchell Pearce was injured, James Maloney wasn't there as well. There's a lot of factors in the Roosters' success that it's just like, I think they happened to just like strike gold with the players that they had signed, and it all just kind of worked. It all came into fruition at the right time. You know, Latrell was there, Cooper Cronk. The forward pack was still young. You had the experienced guys like your Albertsons. Cordner was a great leader. Jake Friend is probably a guy who doesn't get talked about enough. They had an absolute superstar side, and I think just on principle, we look at this side and we go, they're all kind of international sort of players or rep players. They should be pretty good, but it's just not the same. They don't have the enforcers anymore. They don't have like the quality backs. They've got guys who can play a decent game here and there, but they don't have the guys who week in, week out absolutely destroy. And the guys who could potentially carry them in previous years, like your Tedesco's, they're kind of just not firing themselves. So I think the Roosters are big time getting exposed, and I think the signing of Brandon Smith is a big example of them just signing players willy-nilly, and also just the fact that they shift around. Look at Joey Manu, I did mention it earlier, the fact that they've shifted him around position after position. 1 week is here, the next week is there. I just think it shows a clear lack of direction, and I think they've just figured that like, oh, well, they'll figure it out at some point and something will click, and it just hasn't. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked, and I do think it kind of goes with what I sort of said at the start, that the media, they like the Roosters, they don't want to stir the pot too much with them, but any other side, look at the Bulldogs, for example, an absolute shit show. Look at the Tigers, absolute shit show. They're in the papers all the time, trying to sign this guy, trying to sign that guy. Look at the whole Matt Lodge situation, Nathan Brown, they've signed these rep players to come over, or they sign these guys on big money, and then they ship them off, and you know, not a lot gets said about the Roosters, and look, I think it's by design. I think there's no coincidence about it, but any other club, they'll be talking about Trent Robinson, and he'd be fighting for his career, dead set. I know he's won premierships in the past, but we've seen other coaches. Look at Hasley, he's been sacked a couple of times. We've seen premiership winning coaches get sacked. He wouldn't be the first one. The problem is, I think for the Roosters, and I don't know if this is going to work well for the Roosters, I think him having a bit of pressure on him, I think that might be a good thing for them. They might need to actually like pull a finger out and actually try and perform rather than coast by based on the fact that they were good in 2018 and 2019, because that's what I feel is happening. We look back and we go, oh, who was the side to beat to the sort of like be the top side before Penrith came around? Oh yeah, it was Storm and Roosters. Okay, it's just that Penrith have been good for so long. We had the Storm years as well. That it doesn't feel that long ago, but it is a long time ago. It's just the fact that, you know, the Panthers have been so good and been winning it every year. I think it kind of, like, it doesn't make it as obvious that it was that long ago because it's been the same side winning. But yeah, for me, the Roosters definitely massive question marks in them. I don't think, they're obviously not going to win the wooden spoon, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a little bit of a streak. Although they've struggled with that all season. It seems to be win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Seems to be how they're going, but look, the Roosters definitely have the talent to do it. They have lots of individual talent, but just no cohesion. That's what it seems like to me. No cohesion, no game plan, no tactics. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below. Do you agree with me? Like, am I on the money here with the Roosters? Is it Trent Robinson plus like the players that they've signed? They've just picked like some of the best players and went, all right, you guys go play together, figure it out. That's what it feels like to me. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below, like I said. Go ahead and leave a like in the video if you've got it this far through the video. Make sure you subscribe as well. We've hit 15,000, but we don't stop there. We keep making videos. We keep moving. The more likes, the more views, the more subscribers, all that sort of stuff. So make sure you go ahead and do that. All goes hand in hand. Also, go ahead and chuck me a follow on social media. On the screen right now, it's Mr. Luke on YT. That's my TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Give me a follow, give me an ad. Also, special mention to all of the members and the super chatters. You're seeing that on the screen right now. I know I haven't uploaded in a couple of days, but you guys have been so supportive. And look, you've been supportive for a very, very long time. I appreciate every single one of you. There's lots of people ask me when I'm going to be streaming, and a lot of the guys will still come on and they'll super chat and they'll really make my day. So shout out to everybody who's become a member and have super chatted over recent times. And look, I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. See yous.